Welcome to the Leeds Trailblazer Community Group. Thank you everyone for joining this live stream today. I am super excited to kick this event off. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Jonathan Fox and I'm your Leeds Trailblazer Community Group leader. So for those of you who've joined through YouTube Live and maybe not interacted with this group before, welcome and hello. I'm very honoured to have you here. Today is a very special event. Today I'm joined with David Giller. Now, a popular name that you've probably heard around the ecosystem before, for being incredibly passionate about Salesforce and being incredibly involved with the Trailblazer community. David is a former Salesforce MVP and CEO / co-founder / founder of Brainiate. Today, David is going to give us a fantastic talk about personal branding and how it will be useful for you to harness this wealth of knowledge to excel your career going forward. So stick around. There are some giveaways at the end, so do stay tuned until the end. And I would love to welcome David Giller.
Hey everyone, Jonathan, thank you for having me. I am super excited to be here and to share some of my experience and to also help others who are focused on their personal brand or struggling with their personal brand, to help others learn from the hard road that I went through, which we'll get into a little bit more later, to make it a little bit easier for others. So just that alone gives me a huge sense of excitement for being here. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you very much for joining us. If we can, drop a comment in the feed below. Let us know where you're from. If you've got any questions, I'm sure David doesn't mind having questions throughout, and we will try and answer them where possible. Over to you then, David. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. So yes, if anyone has any questions whatsoever, you can feel free to. Yeah, I was not supposed to be on my last slide. So if anyone has any questions whatsoever, you can feel free to just drop them in the comments below. Even though, like, I'll interspersedly, take a look at what's going on the comments feed to respond to anything, but I definitely have a section dedicated later on, as you saw from the first slide, that when I switch my camera on, where I will certainly take a look at all the questions that come in. So this is meant to be interactive. I mean, I have a whole lot of information to share with you, but it's definitely meant to be interactive. So why not go ahead and leverage it? So what we're going to be talking about is how to build your personal brand in order to grow your Salesforce career. For those of you who don't know me, as Jonathan mentioned, I'm CEO of Brainiate, a Salesforce consulting partner. I'm also a Salesforce trainer. I'm also a user group leader in the northern New Jersey area. I'm based in the East Coast, USA. For those of you who are not familiar with me from online, I happen to be a little bit, aside from being a Salesforce geek, I'm also somewhat of a social media addict. So to the extent that you are interested, you can feel free to connect with me online. I typically post a lot of content regarding Salesforce on all of the social media platforms you see represented on the screen. So what we're going to cover today, basically I broke it down into the following phases, where we're going to be talking about what is a personal brand, just even having a solid understanding of what on earth is a personal brand when we're even talking about it. Why create a personal brand? Why is it even important? How to craft your personal brand, and then lastly, how to go about sharing your personal brand. So with that being said, we're going to, as you can see represented on the top of the screen, you can tell where we are in case you get distracted or lost or anything. You can tell where we are in the presentation. So let's first talk about what personal brand is not. Personal brand has nothing to do with the number of likes that you get online. It has nothing to do with the number of followers or connections or Facebook friends. It has nothing to do with how many people subscribe to you online. It is not a popularity contest. It has nothing to do with that. Very often people will assume that it has everything to do with that, and that is the furthest thing from the truth. So, okay, if that's not personal brand, then what the heck is personal brand? According to Wikipedia, the definition on Wikipedia is that personal brand is the ongoing process of establishing a prescribed image or an impression in the mind of others about either an individual or a group or an organization. And the truth is, think for yourself about different companies that you interact with, whether it's Amazon or Target or something like blocking my head over here, blocking with my head, Tiffany's, or even Salesforce or Tesla, Walt Disney. As you think about those brands, even as you simply see the graphical image that represents their logo, very often there will be either certain experiences or certain emotions or certain areas of expertise that come to mind. A certain style of communication, of interacting. Some are more casual, some are way more formal. Some you expect to see comedy or like a snarky comment on their website. In others, you would be shocked to see that. All of that plays into the corporate brand for the company. So personal brand is basically our own individualized version of how we are represented to others, how others perceive us. So I think that's really the best way to truly understand personal brand in the most succinct way. So let me tell you a little bit about what I know about personal branding. So I'm going to bring you back to my world this is circa 2007, 2008. I was working in GE. I was in GE Capital. I was a full-time employee. By the way, for those of you who don't know, I also happen to be an attorney. I'm admitted to practice law in New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. I am clearly not practicing law. I have not been practicing law for a long time. So my point is, former attorney working at GE. I was working for a couple of years in the IT department, first at NBC Universal, managing some very large-scale enterprise projects. Then I moved over to another division of GE, which was GE Capital, also in the IT division, responsible for a CRM called Siebel. And circa 2007, 2008, I moved over from IT into marketing, and that's where Salesforce came into my life. And 2007, 2008, for those of you who don't recall, the world was going through a huge financial crisis. I was in the financial services industry at GE Capital. Everyone was getting laid off. Everyone, it seemed like every couple of months, there were hundreds, if not thousands of people who were getting laid off. So the sense was, it's just a matter of time before I'm getting laid off too. I mean, it's happening everywhere. It has nothing to do with me. So here I was scrambling to find a job, scrambling internally within GE, which is a very large organization, by the way, scrambling to look for a job internally within GE, scrambling to try and keep my current job as long as possible, or find another job anywhere outside in the outside world. And what I discovered was that I was competing against all kinds of other people who were also in financial services. I was competing against every other GE Capital employee, of which there were many thousands, also scrambling for jobs. I did not stand out. I was not giving anyone a good enough reason why they should even look at my resume or have a discussion with me. Now, at the same time, I came to this realization that maybe I did not want to work after leaving GE, because I knew the end would be coming sometime soon. Whether they go alphabetically or by height, eventually they're going to get to me too. I realized that when it comes time for me to actually leave GE, when they show me the door, I realized that I actually did not want to work in the corporate world, meaning as an employee. Again, I decided that I wanted to do my own thing. Okay, so doing my own thing. How on earth is anyone supposed to know or trust? How do you even start? Why should anyone engage with me to start working with me? And that was where, for me, without even knowing what personal branding was as a term, as a concept, I had no clue. The phrase personal brand meant nothing to me whatsoever. It was at that point where I was doing research on trying to figure out How do I start a business? How do I get people to even know that I exist? How do I find clients? That was where the concept of personal brand was first introduced to me. And basically, I embraced it tremendously. I embraced it to the point where I started implementing what I was learning about, and I was learning through YouTube and books and blogs and podcasts. Like I was trying to consume information wherever I could, so long as it was free. And basically, I was implementing whatever I was learning. I was trying to implement it immediately, even at my job at GE Capital. And what I discovered was that by implementing what I was learning, even in tiny, small, bite-sized chunks, by implementing it just even in my job, the job that I had at the time, I was seeing huge impact. I was seeing huge change. I was seeing a transformation in the way people perceived me and responded to me and reacted to me, to the point where, like I said before, 2007, 2008, a lot of people were losing their jobs. There were layoffs happening, it felt like every couple of weeks. I did not get laid off from GE. I survived continuous waves of layoffs until I think it was 2015. That was when I finally got laid off. From 2007 until 2015, I kept walking around telling everyone, all of my friends, all of my family, yeah, I'm going to be getting laid off from GE. Whether it's this week, next week, I don't know, 2 weeks from now, I have no idea. But it's going to be happening, and it's going to happen imminently. They heard me saying this for years. At one point, everyone was joking around with me outside of work. Everyone was joking around with me. Maybe they forgot you even exist. Maybe you're still going to be on payroll forever. And what I discovered was that it was because I was implementing all of these concepts around personal brand, where when it came time for any manager, any senior leader to make their list of, to create their list of who's going to be included in the next round of layoffs, I was oblivious to it, but they were not putting me on the list because I was creating the impression, I was giving the perception that I was of value to the company. Now, by the way, this is not like I was not fabricating anything. I was on a very, very small team responsible for Salesforce. Salesforce was brand new. Salesforce was initially implemented at GE Capital about 2007, 2008 as a cost-cutting measure to reduce expenses associated with Siebel, to reduce some of the headcount from an IT perspective associated with Siebel, and to have a centralized CRM across the organization. So as I was learning about personal branding, what I discovered was that things that I took for granted, things that I knew as a Salesforce admin, things that I knew about as it related to data quality, about logging activities, about creating list views, and how to find all of the opportunities or tasks or leads that were important to the sales reps. All I had to do was to go ahead and take it one step further by educating others on how to do those things. It was about me helping others to empower them. And that's what created my own personal brand. It created this perception where I was critical to the organization because I knew more about Salesforce than anyone else. Now, is it possible that I knew more about Salesforce than anyone else? Maybe. I don't know. But because I became so proactive in sharing all of this, just even internally, we're talking like through emails, through doing Salesforce end user training, by posting internally in chatter groups for other employees, I kept building upon and perpetuating the reputation that essentially it came to a point where, by the way, I'll say it sort of backfired on me because I was insanely frustrated when anyone in the company, anyone at GE Capital had any question that involved the word Salesforce in the sentence, the response typically was, I don't know, you got to ask David Giller. He's the only person who knows this thing. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? You need to ask me how to log a call? How many times have I trained everyone? How many times have I created documentation? How many videos did I create? You need me to help you how to click the forgot password button on the login screen? Are you insane? So I was actually frustrated by it. But at the same time, look, it's a double-edged sword. That's what comes along with creating this perception that you're sort of like the Salesforce guy. And by the way, just even this like phrase of like Salesforce guru, people started calling me that at GE Capital, and I wasn't sure if I should be insulted or take it as a compliment, but I interpreted it as, you know what, this is job security for me. If they perceive me as a Salesforce guru, that means they're likely to not put me at the top of the list of people to get laid off. Anyway, when I finally did get laid off by GE, I actually felt a huge sigh of relief because I was waiting for it to happen for so long. And I felt that sort of like, I'll call it the golden handcuffs were removed, because at that point, by finally getting laid off by GE, I was able to actually share that personal brand on a global scale. So prior to leaving GE, I was not doing blogging. I was not doing podcasting. I was not doing public speaking of any kind. I was actually the opposite, by the way. There was so much internal politics at GE Capital. I'm not going to go too far in this. It's not a therapy session for me, where other people, other less qualified, incompetent people who knew much less about Salesforce or a particular Salesforce implementation, those are the people who were selected to get on stage, to speak at Dreamforce, to get on stage in front of other GE Capital employees to talk about like the projects that I was working on. And I felt insanely, insanely frustrated and annoyed by it. So I was, and at the same time, being in a large company like GE, there's a lot of politics and a lot of rules about who is permitted to speak publicly. And when you do speak publicly, like even if I was selected to, let's say, speak at Dreamforce about a project that I implemented at GE, the entire script and everything would have to go through HR and legal and marketing to get approved. And honestly, none of that is my style whatsoever. I would rather get on stage and speak from the heart and speak in an unfiltered way. Like, here's how we did the project. Here are the stuff that was crappy about the project. Here's the stuff that was awesome about the project. So when I finally did leave GE, it was like, okay, all filters were removed. And that was when I started really jumping into everything associated with personal branding. And honestly, I still consider myself to be a student of personal branding, even though I've been focusing immensely on everything about personal branding for the past, I'll say, many years now. And I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly trying to improve things. And that's why I'm super excited to share any of that knowledge and insight with you guys. So moving on along, why create a personal brand? So with that context, hopefully everything else that I talk about is going to make a lot more sense and you'll see where I'm coming from. So why create a personal brand? You need to focus on your personal brand to build your own credibility. Again, this is not a popularity contest. To build your credibility, to showcase the areas of specialty that you happen to have. You might have an insane amount of knowledge and expertise in your brain and in your history. Others have no way of knowing it. They're not mind readers. They have no way to even know to ask you about any of it, for you to give you an opportunity to even share it. It will help you leave your mark, to stay connected with your target audience. Now, some of you might be like, target audience, what the heck are you talking about? I'm not a blogger. I'm not a YouTuber. I have no intention of, what's my audience? If you are a full-time employee at any company, your target audience is not only your direct manager, it's everyone who your direct manager reports up into, right up to the CEO, and all of your colleagues at work. So let's say if you are a Salesforce admin, your target audience is not only senior leadership within the organization, your target audience is every Salesforce user within your organization. That's your target audience. Now, by the way, your target audience also is every future employer that you could potentially have. Every hiring manager at every company that you might potentially want to go to. You have a huge audience. So think about that. In order to be able to distinguish yourself from your competition. So similarly, those of you who are full-time Salesforce employees, full-time employees at a company focusing on Salesforce, you might be like, competition? I don't have competition. Oh, yes, you do. All of your current colleagues are your competition. When it comes time for a promotion, a new role opens up within the organization, that's an opportunity for someone to consider you or any of your colleagues or anyone else who's not currently employed at the company to fill that role. So you have a lot of competition. You also have competition when you are looking to apply to any other job outside of your current place of employment. Your competition is everyone else who's applying for that job. You have a lot of competition. So you need to stand out from your competition. The question is, how are you going to do that? You need to also be able to focus your energy and to build your own confidence. By the way, any questions that any of you have on any of this stuff, go ahead and put it in the chat. I'll take a look at it in a little bit. So don't worry about it. I don't want you to lose track of that question. So if it's fresh in your mind, just go ahead and pop it into the comments. So now the question becomes, okay, so I get it, why personal brand is important. How do I go about doing it? Where do I even start? Let's focus on that. So the first thing is, it's actually not bragging about yourself. I talked about how it's important to share your personal brand so that others know about your knowledge, your expertise, your wisdom, the advice that you have to share. But it's actually not bragging. It's not putting it right out there saying, look at how much I know. Look at how many certifications I have. Look at how smart I am. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's about helping your target audience. So it's nothing about you. It's everything about your target audience. And that could mean a lot of different things. So I'll give you an example for myself as a Salesforce consultant, as a Salesforce trainer. Who is my target audience? My target audience is every Salesforce admin out there that's struggling. That's my target audience. So if I put myself in the shoes of every Salesforce admin that's out there that's struggling, what is it that they could potentially be struggling with? They could potentially be struggling with keeping up with new releases, with data quality issues. They could be struggling with end user training issues, project management issues, gathering business requirements, scope creep. I can keep going on and on and on. And all of those topics, those all fall, for those of you who are following me anywhere online, those will sound familiar because those are all of the topics that I focus on in the content that I'm sharing. So even if, let's say, I've gained a piece of insight, I learned that a new feature exists. What I'm going to do when I'm sharing that with my target audience, so even if it means sharing it on social media or sharing it at a user group meetup where I want to share some information, here's a piece of wisdom, of advice, of best practice that I want to share. I'm never presenting it as, look how smart I am, look how much I know, I'm going to share it. Like, here's the problems that I solve. No, I always share it from the perspective of, here's a common problem that I know I'm experiencing or I've experienced in the past, and I know many other Salesforce admins have experienced, and I just recently stumbled on this one thing. I had this eye-opening moment. Or here's how I've done it. Here's how I've been solving this particular use case, even if it's for the past 10 years. Here's how I've been solving for it. Maybe this can help you. So it has nothing to do with me. I'm simply the messenger. Everything about sharing that information is about how it will be of help to the target audience. And that also allows me to not care if it falls on deaf ears. Suppose I post something on LinkedIn, and on LinkedIn I have X number of people that are going to actually see that piece of information, whatever it is that I'm about to post. If any one person responds by saying, "Oh my gosh, this was so helpful," that made my day. That's it. That's it. Mission accomplished. For people who look at my post and say, oh my God, here he goes again, freaking posting about Salesforce crap. And by the way, there are a lot of times where I'll meet someone like in my local community or a family member or a relative, and they'll be like, oh man, every time I log on to LinkedIn, it's like you hijacked my feed. I turn to them and I say, well, go ahead. I don't care. You can go ahead and unsubscribe. You can even block me. I couldn't care less. They're like, hell no, you post good shit. They're like, okay, then what is it? What do you want? So my point is, I'm not insulted whatsoever if my message, if what I'm sharing does not resonate with my audience, because I want to be able to help people. If the message that I'm giving, if it's noise, if it's insulting to people, if nobody gets any value out of it, then I have a problem. I've yet to find that happens. And it's not because, oh, I'm so brilliant. It's because I have my finger on the pulse as a Salesforce trainer, as a Salesforce consultant, by working on Salesforce projects, by being involved in the Salesforce community. I have my finger constantly on the pulse of the problems, the frustrations, the issues, the challenges that many Salesforce admins have. I'm intimately familiar with a lot of it. By the way, I'm always surprised by new, like, holy crap, I can't believe you got to deal with that, of new challenges that I haven't encountered before. But I have my finger on the pulse of a lot of these issues, so it becomes like very easy for me to um, to correlate my message along with that. Anyway, let's move on along. So we're still talking about how to craft your personal brand. It's about also understanding the value that you are providing others. It's about promising your followers an ROI. So I'm not, at no point am I bluntly telling people, if you follow me, here's the kind of information that you're going to get. But I'm making it implied, and that's 100% what's in my head, and I make sure that what I'm sharing is in line with what I have in my head, so that my audience quickly catches on, because if pretty much all I'm posting is Salesforce related stuff, and it all happens to be either, here's a new piece of information, a new feature that you might find helpful, here's a common problem that I find super frustrating, or even if I'll take something and turn it into, by the way, I have this often. I'll take a frustrating experience that I have with a client or on a project. I'll turn it into a meme. I'll try to find the humor in it, the sarcasm in that situation, turn it into a meme and post it online. Those are usually the posts that totally go viral. So basically the ROI that people are getting by just even seeing some of the content that I'm sharing, they immediately get that the ROI is, I'll be sharing Salesforce stuff that's targeted towards a Salesforce admin, not the end user, not a developer, not necessarily the Salesforce executive who thinks they're a Salesforce admin, but they have no idea what the heck they're doing. So it's all targeted to the Salesforce admin, things that I think would be helpful for the Salesforce admin. It will help you identify your core values and what really matters to you. It'll help you identify your core passions. What is it that gets you excited? What kinds of projects would you love working on? What kinds of topics do you love talking about? And it will also help you identify just your talents, the things that you're good at. What you love and what you're good at might not be an exact match. I might completely love cooking, but I might be horrible at it. So those are really two different things. Anyway, so when we talk about talents, what is it that you do better than most people? So in line with how to craft your personal brand, what you need to do is you need to identify the top 5 skills that people seem to notice in you. And by the way, a lot of times people struggle with this. You could simply ask other people, hey, what do you think I'm best at? What do you think are my biggest strengths? What topics do you see me get most excited about? From that, you can go ahead and craft a statement of your specialty, including your top 5 skills. Weave in the most important values and passions that you have, and that will help you add a tagline to your brand. So essentially what we're doing is we're creating that, what's often referred to as sort of like an elevator speech, that summary. That suppose you met someone standing in line at Starbucks, if Starbucks were open and everyone's wearing a mask, that you're standing in line at Starbucks and someone who's otherwise a complete stranger turns to you and says, hey, you look familiar. Who are you? And you start identifying yourself, and the other person basically tells you that they are responsible for Salesforce at pick some major global company, Disney. And they're like, so tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do. You want to impress that person, right? You want to basically showcase to that person that this is worth getting into a much bigger conversation. This could lead to a potential job. So by doing everything that's listed here, that will help you sort of figure out what message do you want to get across, what tone do you want to get across, what words are you going to choose to respond to, sort of summarize not only what you do, but what excites you about what you do. And using your authentic voice, this comes across, what I want to say is this comes across in a very clear way to people if someone were to either memorize a script or they are forced as a corporate employee, they are forced to use specific terminology, it becomes apparent pretty quickly. And by the way, this is one reason why a lot of times people gravitate towards the stuff that I share, because I'm just speaking authentically. I'm running my own business. So I don't have to answer to a CEO. I have to answer to every single client of mine. I don't have to answer to a CEO, which means I don't have a corporate policy that someone else created and is imposing on me that will dictate what I am permitted to talk about, what I'm not permitted to talk about, or the way I talk about something. So very often, those of you who follow me online on social media, you'll see like I'll post something and someone will try to just sort of like get me riled up, and they'll just bring up like multi-select pick lists, like topics like multi-select pick lists come up, and all of a sudden you're going to see smoke coming out of my ears, and I have no hesitation in saying I want to meet the Salesforce employee that's responsible for that crap, because I'm going to smack them across the head because that garbage should have been killed many years ago. So that's part of using your authentic voice. And you know what? People resonate with that. Because even if whether you're talking in an excited, passionate way about something in particular, or a very heated way about something that's frustrating to you, people get that and they realize this person's being real. Like, I'm not getting some corporate gibberish nonsense that's just being fed to me. By the way, that's why a lot of times Salesforce employees appreciate to hear what I have to say on certain topics, because they know that they're not going to get some corporate phrases that were bundled together into a statement. Anyway, next, embrace your imperfections. And some of you might be wondering, what are you talking about? Embrace your imperfections. Like, wait, you're talking about personal branding, trying to impress people and trying to make a good impression with people. Why should I be embracing my imperfections? I should be ignoring the imperfections. I should be hiding the imperfections. No. Part of being authentic is knowing where you have strengths and what your weaknesses are. So I'll give you an example for myself. When it comes to almost all of the aspects of being a Salesforce admin, everything from gathering of business requirements, reviewing the data quality issues, adoption user training issues, the project management issues, the configuring Salesforce, the drag and drop declarative methods that we have to configure Salesforce. I have tremendous strengths in all of that stuff. You try talking to me about building the simplest page of HTML code, and my head will spin, and I just can't. And I have no hesitation in turning to someone. They show me a Visualforce page or an HTML page or anything with code, anything that typically a developer would do, and it's like, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's not me. I can't even follow. I have no capability in doing any of that. Talk about CPQ. I've never had an opportunity yet to learn CPQ. So you try to have a conversation with me or ask me to do a project or my thoughts on anything about CPQ. I have no hesitation in saying I have no clue. I'm looking forward to the time when I have the ability to the space on my calendar to actually focus on it, to learn it. I'd love to learn it, absolutely. But as of today, as of this moment, I have zero expertise in CPQ. So embracing your imperfections is part of being your authentic self, and your audience will recognize that and they will respect that tremendously, because that will also make it abundantly clear that when you do speak confidently about something, it's because you truly do know it. You're not just making stuff up, because if you don't know something, you'll just say you don't know. End of story. And by the way, it makes it much easier interaction with people no matter what, because you don't know, like, the conversation's over. You don't have to try to fake your way through a conversation. All right, we're continuing on how to craft your personal brand. You need to build your communication skills, and this includes writing, this includes verbal, and it also includes video, especially now in today's world. Over the last 5 years, I'll say, the embracing of video has just completely skyrocketed, and we see that even more so. We see that now in the world of coronavirus, where we're working remote and we're working with Zoom meetings most of the time. But even before anything about coronavirus, we see from most social media platforms, they've not only added the capability to share video, but video has become prime front and center of most social media platforms. So video is a very big deal. It takes a lot of time, patience, skill to learn. Anyone can learn it. Uh, to learn how to speak to an inanimate object of a lens as if it's a person. It does not come easy for everyone. I do have the capability where I can talk to a doorknob forever. So it still took a while because my early on, trying to create videos, whether it's a training video or anything, I struggled a whole lot. So and with practice, you build up the skill. In today's world, you need all of those. And when we talk about written, by the way, that also includes just text messaging. It also includes what you're sharing through Slack. It also includes what you're sharing in an email, not only a document that captures business requirements. It's everything. Because if people can't clearly understand whatever it is that you're trying to share, your message is getting diluted. And if anything, it could also be causing a whole lot of frustration for people. Anyway, I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit because I'm realizing that I need to leave more time for the questions and answers. Okay, it will also, so how you go about crafting your brand, it's also about building relationships with existing influencers, learning how to say no to certain things that are outside of the scope of what makes you comfortable. That's really important, learning how to say no. Most of us, we feel that we need to say yes all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've fired clients. I fire clients often. When clients insist that me or my team do things that are completely nonsensical, I will make it abundantly clear to them that that is not a best practice. Here are the reasons why we don't recommend doing it. And depending on what it is that we're talking about, and depending on the attitude that I get back on them insisting on doing it, a lot of times I'll turn to them like, look, I am not building a freaking multi-select pick list for you. If you want to do it, you go ahead and build it yourself. I want nothing to do with it. And by the way, don't come my way when you want to sort, filter, or report on anything that's in that multi-select pick list. We will not be doing it. So if it's something as concise and focused and limited as that, within we can keep it compact that in that way, compartmentalized. Sometimes it expands to the entire relationship. Where, for example, I'm working with a client where they know nothing about Salesforce, but they will talk about how Salesforce was used at their prior place of employment, where they were not the admin either. They can't even speak clearly about how Salesforce was implemented at their prior place of employment, but they want us to replicate whatever Frankenstein they had at their prior job where they're no longer working. And we'll turn to them and say, no, that makes absolutely no sense. You can't even describe to me exactly what it is that you're talking about that you want us to implement. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. That was all custom code. We are not rebuilding all of those Visual Force pages that you've dreamt up and in a half-baked way communicated. And if you keep insisting that we have to replicate something that does not make sense, we're going our separate ways. Like, this will be our last conversation. We're done. So you need to feel comfortable with that. That goes back to knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, knowing what makes you comfortable, knowing what your passions are, knowing the value of what you bring to the table so that you can say no to everything else that doesn't fit in. Consistently produce strategic, helpful content and listen to your audience. If you are not listening to your audience, you can't possibly have a message that resonates with them because you can easily go off base. All right, how to share your personal brand. This is probably the easiest part and the part that most people focus exclusively on. They don't focus on the actual content or anything else. They just focus on the logistics. So what are we talking about? It actually becomes relatively easy in today's world. So, okay, personal introductions, even if we're not necessarily meeting in person, world tours aren't necessarily happening, Dreamforce is not happening, user group meetups are only virtual like this. Even still, you could have personal introductions, even in today's world, even it could be through WhatsApp, FaceTime, it could be through a Zoom meeting where you could still virtually, face-to-face, have a real conversation, engage with people at their level, whatever their level is. Find out what is it that is important to them. What are their pain points? What is it that they want to interact with you about? During internal meetings at your current job, when you're in a meeting and someone talks about a particular feature, if you happen to know best practices on how we should use it or shouldn't use it, if you have an opinion, you need to share it. Whether you share it during that meeting or after the fact, saying, oh, by the way, during the meeting, we talked about, let's say, someone suggested we use multi-select pick lists. Before we go down that road, I want to just share with you some best practices. Here are some links to other articles that talk about the downfalls of using multi-select pick lists. We might want to think about this before we go ahead with it. So things like that, where you are infusing in the right way with the right timing to the right people, the fact that you have something to share, you have something of value to bring to the table. It could also be done day to day in your regular job. Blogging. A lot of people are not comfortable with blogging. You don't have to do blogging, but it becomes very easy in the world of Medium and LinkedIn. You don't even have to have your own blog. If you have content to share, a project that you worked on, a new feature that you're excited about, even if you haven't implemented that feature yet, you simply learn the fact that that feature exists. Let's say here in the summer release, we have dynamic forms in Lightning, where you can basically take apart the page layout into different components and make them dynamically visible or not visible based on certain conditions. You haven't necessarily used that feature yet, but you've learned about it. You're super excited about it. Go ahead and share it. Create an article. Just post it on LinkedIn. You don't even need to have your own blog. Just post it on LinkedIn. Create a Medium account. Post it on Medium. Start sharing it with people. Once you go ahead and do that, you could also start sharing it on other social media platforms. Now, by the way, when I talk about sharing on social media, you could also, and many of you see that I do this often, I share content that I did not even create. Salesforce creates, sometimes it's my competitors, other Salesforce consultants. They create YouTube videos and blog articles and knowledge articles about best practices on how to use certain features. I'm still sharing it with my social networks because it will help others. Even if I'm simply the facilitator of sharing that piece of knowledge, even if it's from a competitor, that will still, it could help my competitor. That's completely cool. It will help my target audience. That's way more important. And by the way, it comes back to help you because it shows your target audience that you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the Salesforce community. Very important stuff. All right, moving on along. Public speaking opportunities. There are many people who are not as comfortable as I am just talking to an inanimate object or standing at the front of the room talking to other people and having all eyes on you. I'm not saying that you have to do it, but what I'm saying is it's a huge missed opportunity. There are user group leaders all over the world that have Salesforce user groups, and they struggle to find content or to find speakers to come and speak and share wisdom, Salesforce knowledge and expertise, best practices at their user group meetups. Especially now in the world we're living in today, you could basically do it wearing shorts at home, shorts and a t-shirt at home. You don't have to go anywhere. You just open up a Zoom meeting and boom, you're sharing about things that you know. So consider it is all I'm saying. You could also consider it internally within your own organization by public speaking, sharing best practices and knowledge and advice internally, whether maybe it's at a team meeting. You might say, hey, our team gets together once a week. How about if we just take 5 minutes to share? I want to share some insights and new features that are coming out in the latest release, or some best practices on data quality that I read in a recent blog article. Here's the article. Here's what I think about it. Here are the key things that I think all of us should learn on this particular thing. So there's a lot of opportunities here. The things that you can share include what is it that you're learning, who you recently met, what kind of projects you're working on, who you're working on those projects with, what features you recently stumbled on, even who introduced you to those features, what Salesforce features you're excited about, even if you haven't used those features yet. There's a lot right there. There's basically Salesforce creates an ocean of content for you with each seasonal release. Just saying. You can also share what kind of business problems you've solved using the Salesforce platform. Hey, by the way, my team, here's what the sales reps were experiencing before. They've shared these pain points with me. Here's how I went about solving for it on the Salesforce platform. And here's what the experience is like for them today. Very simple. It's a before and after story. It becomes very, very simple. And so long as it's authentic, it's going to become very easy for you to create that content regardless of the medium of content that you leverage. New ideas and best practices that you've uncovered. Key concepts to remember. We're wrapping up over here. It's not all about you. It's about your audience. Give more than you take. When you're building your personal brand, think of it as you are planting seeds and it's going to take a while. A while could be a couple of months. It could be a couple of years. It will be a while until you reap the rewards of the seeds you are planting today. It is not, everyone wants immediate gratification for everything. This is not you're flicking a switch and the light turns on. No, it takes time. It'll take time for you to even define and build and share your personal brand. It will take time for you, even after you share it, it will take time for you to see the rewards of it, to see it sticking, to see the responses that you get. You could easily share existing content so long as it's aligned with your brand. Stay consistent, do good work, and live by your values. So for those of you who are interested in learning more about personal branding, I happen to have a course that I've created on personal branding, and I am giving you the URL that you see here on the screen. If you go to that URL, you will save $100 on this course. And actually what we're going to do in a moment, Jonathan is going to, we're going to be raffling off. Jonathan's going to pull a number out of a virtual hat, I'll say, of everyone who RSVP'd for this meetup. So one person is going to win a complimentary access to my course on personal branding for Salesforce admins, where basically what I do is I take you through all of the concepts that we talked about right now, but I take you through it in way more detail with worksheets and checklists and clear examples in more of a hand-holding way. With that being said, ready for questions and answers. So let me switch the screen right now. I'll take a look at, not that screen, this one. Put on my old man reading glasses. In the meantime, Jonathan, you can go ahead and, if you're ready.
Hey there, yeah, thank you very much for that. I personally really enjoyed it, and I've been watching the comments, and a lot of people have been getting some valuable nuggets of information there. And I've seen a couple of questions, but what I'll go ahead and do first is, do you want me to share my screen now and raffle it off, or do you want to answer a couple of questions?
So I can't do the sharing of your screen right now.
No,
if you could just do the raffling off without sharing your screen.
Sure.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm scanning all of the chats to look for the questions to respond to. So yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so for your course, drum roll, we have got Richard Usher. So congratulations.
Congratulations, Richard. So basically, Richard, what are you going to do?
Well done.
Jonathan, do you have his email address that you can share with me, or should I just tell him to get in touch with you and through that it'll come to me?
Sadly, we don't get the email addresses due on the Bevy, the start out, but I'm sure if he gets in touch with myself or you, or if we don't hear from him in a day or so, I'm sure we can reach out to him and grab his attention.
Beautiful. And also just through the Trailblazer community, we can do that. And you also have something else to raffle off.
I do indeed. So another lucky winner is going to get a certification voucher from myself. So this certification voucher, I believe it's $200 or $400 exams. So lucky you guys. And it could be that first step into being a Salesforce admin. Who knows? So I'll go ahead and do another drum roll. We've got, let's see, who's it going to pick? Jonathan Acuna. Congratulations, well done. You're the lucky winner of a Salesforce certification voucher. Congratulations, well done.
Awesome. I'm eager to hear which certification is going to be redeemed with that voucher.
Absolutely. Very exciting.
All right, let's take a look at some of the questions that we have over here. And Jonathan is actually on live. Okay, one of the big things I often hear about personal branding is finding your unique voice. Do you think this is necessary? How do I find it when that many people are doing the same thing? So the answer is, let me put it over here not to block our faces. Sorry about that. Finding your unique voice. Let's say we're talking about something that is as even way more popular than Salesforce, way more popular than even being a Salesforce admin. Let's say you have an iPhone and we're talking about sharing your perspective on using an iPhone, the things you like about it, the things you don't like about it, the things you find frustrating. It could be anything. Even though there are a gazillion people who have online videos, tweets, blog articles, sharing their perspective on the iPhone, it's not you. You have your own voice. And you know what? This is one area where a lot of times I'll joke around, like especially when it comes to Salesforce configuration, and everyone thinks they're special. Everyone thinks they need their own page layout. They need their own role and profile named after them. Baloney. No, no. But in the real world, when it comes to things like this, yes, everyone is special. Everyone has different words that they would use to describe their thoughts, their impressions, their perspective on things. Everyone has a slightly different perspective. So even if we're talking about the things you like about the iPhone, if you ask even everyone who's in this meetup right now, all the things that we like or don't like about an iPhone, we're all going to have slightly different things. There might be some common things, but even of those common things, let's say we're talking about how often it is that the screen cracks, or how quickly the battery runs out. All of us are going to have slightly different experiences as it relates to how we even deal with the same frustrating experience. So everyone does truly have their own voice when you put it in the perspective of here's the experience, but here are some of the details of what leads up to it, or how I feel when I experience it, or how I respond when I'm confronted with that situation again. Each one of us, it ends up being a very unique story for every single one of us. So yes, you do have your own unique voice. Thank you for asking that question, by the way.
Do you mind if I quickly chime in, David, on that one?
By all means.
So I personally am I'm personally in the ecosystem as a whole, but I'm also quite new to this whole blogging, YouTubing, making articles. I thoroughly enjoy it. Is it? Does it work? I don't know. I'm still yet to see completely that ROI, but I'm still going to go at it. I'm still going to give it 100% effort. But what I would say, and I say it about every single topic, every walk of life, give it a go.
Absolutely. And also keep in mind when you are talking about when the content is in line with the things that excite you, it ends up being a self-rewarding activity. So let's say for those of us who are excited about, let's say, the use of list views um, to manage data quality. So let's say we're talking about, having list views where the email address is not populated. All of my tier one customers that don't have an email address, or the job title is not populated. So something as boring and as simplistic as creating a list view with a simplistic singular filter on it. Like, this is really not a big deal. But understanding as a Salesforce admin, understanding the impact, the power of having something so simple for someone who's in sales or someone who's in marketing, where prior to doing a large email distribution, by seeing and reviewing all of the primary contacts that don't have an email address, these are people who are not going to get our newsletter, and putting yourself in the shoes of the impact of that and how you help other people to even recognize the power of using list views for that, that's going to start generating a whole lot of excitement. And it ends up being less about the creation of the YouTube video or the blog article, and more about simply sharing that piece of information, where in the end, yes, you might put your heart and soul into it. Yes, you might struggle with the formatting of the video and editing of the video. And what am I putting as an intro or an outro? Am I going to have an overlay of music or like all? And that's why I always recommend to people, start small and think simple at first. Just go very simple, rudimentary. And that's why I'm saying, even like before thinking about a blog, just post it on LinkedIn as a native LinkedIn article. You don't have to create a domain. You don't have to get WordPress. You don't have to do any of that stuff. And just start sharing. And it could be no images whatsoever, just the text, and start sharing it with people. And you're going to see all it takes is one person to tell you, oh my gosh, this was so helpful. I didn't even realize that list views can be used in such a powerful way. And that's going to light a fire. So that'll help you keep with it and go for the long term, because in the end, it's not about how many articles you publish. It's not about how many videos you post. It's not. It's about helping others. And honestly, that's how I see the entire Salesforce ecosystem is really all about. The Salesforce Ohana is about really us helping each other through learning new skills, solving different problems, figuring things out together. That's part of what I love. Yeah. It
I
does
think that's
not
why we all like to be so involved with the ecosystem, isn't it?
100%. Yeah. It does not look like we have any other questions that have come in, and we are at the top of the hour. I'm happy to stay a little bit longer if there are any other questions, but I'm not seeing anything. So we could just wrap it up.
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, if anyone else does have any questions, definitely give David a follow on Instagram. I watch his story daily, just because sometimes it's amusing to see the responses to some of the bizarre questions he gets, but also because I do personally learn some things as well from some of the answers he provides. So give him a
Thank you.
follow. If you do have any questions, I'm sure he wouldn't mind you popping that question to him when he asks his little questions on his story. Likewise,
Absolutely.
myself, fire a question. We're all here to help. We're all here to chat.
Awesome. Thank you. So before we wrap up, I see Jonathan has one quick question. I'm just throwing it on the screen over here. How do you measure ROI of your content? The way I measure ROI of my content, it has nothing to do with how many views it had. It has to do with, did anyone find it beneficial? It's a very low threshold. Very low. Now, at the same time, I am very critical of myself. So even as it relates to whether, let's say, it's something like creating video, in terms of what words did I use? Probably should have used different words. I used the same phrase too many times. I shouldn't have said it like that. I should have spoken faster. I should have spoken slower. I should have, edited these portions of it. That's all nonsense. Because you know what? I don't care. I really don't. In the end, I'm not. I certainly want that my content should appear polished and professional. But what I really want more than that, more than anything about the formatting, um, my core passion is about helping others to solve problems. Period. I happen to have chosen this path where it's solving problems on the Salesforce platform. So long as I'm able to help one person solve that one problem on the Salesforce platform, to me that was a huge win. Huge. So the number of people, so even like on Instagram, the number of people that are simply even viewing my content or hitting like, I really don't care. In the end, to me, the reward is I'm getting constantly, people are private messaging me. Let's just take Instagram as an example. People are private messaging me on Instagram telling me how one question that I answered a year ago gave them tremendous insight and started an entire conversation, an entire project, and led to an entire career change for that person, aside from solving that particular problem that they had at work. To me, that's like winning the lotto. Totally. So that's my ROI. That's how I measure ROI on my content. I hope you found that helpful. All right. Looks like we're done. Thank you all. Jonathan, thank you for having me. Um,
No, it's my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you for taking your time, giving this back to the Leeds community and wider community, to everyone else who has joined. It is honestly been my pleasure. Thank you very much for being here.
awesome. Thank you. Have a wonderful night for those of you who are in the UK. I still have quite a few hours to my day before I call it a night. All right. Talk to you all soon.
Thank
Bye
you. Cheers.
bye.
Bye bye.